This episode was made possible by ExpressVPN. Start browsing the web securely with 3 months free by going to expressvpn.com/MMI. On this episode of Meet My Inspiration, I talk with Ashaba Faridah. Ashaba is a pilot in Uganda, East Africa, but she is so much more than just a pilot. She is also the founder and CEO of Bambino Life Foundation, an organization that focuses on promoting education and empowerment for young girls, creating awareness about children living with disabilities, and providing a sustainable environment to children living in orphanages. She and her foundation have impacted the lives of thousands of children in her community. She has also been named to the top 40 under 40 and a representative of the UN Women Impossible to Ignore. And now, please welcome Ashaba Faridah. Hello, Ashaba. Thank you very much for joining me on Meet My Inspiration. Let's begin with you introducing the Bambino Life Foundation.
Thank you so much, Chris, for having me here today. The Bambino Life Foundation is a non-profit organization that is based in Uganda, East Africa. One of our main missions is to promote girl child education and empowerment in rural parts of Uganda, and also try to make sure, like I said, girls stay in school and are able to pursue their dreams. I try to use my platform as a pilot to especially make sure that we try to make sure that girls in rural areas dream big, and also besides that, make sure that they stay in school. That is one of the biggest challenges, especially in rural areas. You find girls getting off married at a young age, getting pregnant at a young age, and we wanted to eradicate some of those problems. And the other thing is generally catering for the welfare of the less privileged children in local societies. Yes, that is more or less about Bambino Life Foundation.
Okay, wonderful. We'll get into that a little bit more in detail later on. Let's talk a little bit about you. Let's go back to your early life. What kind of upbringing did you have?
Well, Chris, thanks for asking that question. I grew up in a humble background, actually. I grew up with a single mother, and she was the sole breadwinner of the home. So I did not have many options available to me when I was growing up. Even when it came to dreaming or things that I thought I would be when I grew up, it was very limited because I often looked at my background and what it could afford me, and there weren't many options. So growing up in the outskirts of Kampala in a humble background, I learned to appreciate, I guess, the things that I had. But more than that, it made me want to be able to give back and be able to help those who didn't have, because I knew what it meant to be in that particular position. Well, as the story goes, at some point, I did come upon an opportunity that made me realize that I can dream bigger than where I come from or my background. And yeah, I guess we shall get back into that later. But yeah, so my background was pretty much humble, and it was a poor background. It was a lot of struggling, a lot of trying to understand your parents' finances and not ask for so much more. Yeah, it was a simple background.
So you come from a humble background, but I'm sure there must have been somebody in your life, perhaps your mother. She seems like she was a pretty strong person. When you were a child, who did you look up to? Who was a role model for you?
I have to say it has been my mother. And it's not even in a sense of you just say role model. It's more like you see someone do things on a daily basis, and subconsciously you start looking up to her, what she's doing, and you want to do that because I saw her working so hard. She could have just sat down and not done anything, but I saw her working so hard, building up her business, taking it from zero to something. I saw her putting herself out there and never pitying herself and thinking, oh, I deserve this because I'm a single mother. She was always hardworking. But more than that, I saw her helping other family members and always putting, their needs above hers. So growing up seeing that, she became my role model over time. Even as a young child, I always looked up to her strength and her courage. Yeah, it's always been my mother.
Well, you're lucky to have her. Let's get to your life now. You mentioned earlier that you are a pilot. Um, it's
Yes.
quite a rare thing, I think, for somebody of your humble background, as you said, period, to have ambitions to become a pilot. But especially, you know, maybe in Uganda, as a female, to have ambition to be a pilot, it's quite unique and it's quite a big challenge. When did you first have the idea of becoming a pilot?
Uh, I didn't always think I would be one. Honestly, like I said, because of my background, I didn't think I could afford it. It was more like daydreaming, actually. But more than that, I didn't know that we had aviation in Uganda. It was something that I came to realize later on. I think after high school, I had gone to do a diploma in flight operations and management. And when we went to the flying school, I think around orientation time, we're doing some orientation. And then I saw a plane come and land during one of the orientation sessions. And this lady walked out. And there was something so empowering about seeing her walk out of that plane and, you know, being in charge, that when I saw her, I knew I had to be her. I had to follow that dream. And that is what changed my entire perspective. I did have to look for a scholarship to be able to pursue that because I wouldn't afford it. It took a bit of time, I think like 2 years chasing that scholarship, but changing my perspective or the entire narrative, it started when I saw her get out of that plane and taking charge and command. And it was such an inspiring moment that I knew that I had to be like her. I had to do that.
That's amazing. So, to become a pilot in Uganda, the pilot training school that you went to, how was the schooling or training process to become a pilot for you?
Well, becoming a pilot has a bit of parts and segments. So you have the theory part, which is ground school, and then you first get a student pilot license, which enables you to fly as a student, and then you proceed to a private pilot license, and then you go to a commercial pilot license. So I currently hold both a private pilot license and a commercial pilot license. And then you finish that off, or the procedure in Uganda here, particularly after that, you can be able to get your instrument rating or your multi-engine rating. And I'm currently training for my multi-engine rating. That is why I'm at currently. And yeah, so it's basically the ground school, and then you also have the practical part of it. Yeah.
Well, from beginning to end, how long is the process usually?
And normally, it should be able to take about 2 years, but because of so many circumstances that could interrupt uh, the sessions, or for example, you have like weather, and then where the school I went, it's a government school. Sometimes you had, you know, like instructors on strike, which could take like months and months. There were times that there would be no fuel, which would also take months, or like a plane has a problem and they have to ship in the spare part all the way from abroad, which takes like 4 months. So there are so many things that delay you. And the next thing you know, you find yourself, you're 5 years into the course and you're not yet anywhere to be done. So, and especially if you're on scholarship now, like me, there
Mm,
isn't much option because you have to stay no matter how long it takes. You really have to stay until you're able to do that. If you have your own money, it is easier. You can try other options, but a normal piloting course should be around 1.5 years. If everything is on spot and the weather and everything is fine, it should be about 1.5 years. It's accelerated.
and you're 5 years in so far.
Yes.
Taking a little bit
Yeah.
longer, I guess. Well, you're learning more that way.
It it's it's frustrating. It's frustrating, but if you're on scholarship, you learn to, I guess, be patient because you don't have any other option.
That's true. And the end result will be everything that you dreamed of, right?
I hope so. I hope
Uh,
so.
so you live and work in Uganda, where there are not too many other female pilots in particular, I guess. How does that make this kind of work more challenging, do you think, for a female pilot?
Of course, there has to be gender bias, and I think this is not only limited to piloting, because one of the things that you get to know as a woman in aviation, you get to join many women in their different countries and try to get together so that you share some of the challenges that you all face. And generally, women in Africa in the aviation are not many. There are really not many. So, and in Uganda, they're counted on your fingertips. So it's a bit challenging to break through an industry that has been seen for a long time as male dominated. But I believe at the end of the day, if you really know what you want, you'll get to push through. There will be biases here and there whereby, as a woman, let me say you achieve something, it's not going to be attributed to your hard work. They would think that maybe someone went easy on you because you're a woman, or maybe you're sleeping your way up, or all those kind of things. And then being despised by your fellow, pilots because they're guys and they see you as a weaker sex. Women are called emotional. But at the end of the day, if you really love what you're doing and you know why you're doing it, you persevere. You persevere through all of that.
Well, and hopefully you're laying the groundwork for changing those biases for future women pilots. Do you feel that way?
Yes, I feel that way. But also, one of the things that I normally tell even the young girls or students or anyone is that if you're really good at what you do, because piloting is practical, you're either a good pilot or you're not. Your actions should always speak for you. It doesn't make sense when you are so vocal and you're speaking this and that, but your actions say otherwise, or they contradict what you're saying. So if you are an action-based person, you focus on the results that come with your actions, and those should speak for you. If you are in a challenging position, people are not going to look at your words, they're going to look at what you've done so far and your experience. And that's what matters. Of course, I also know that words hurt, and when people say these things, they do hurt. But also trying not to give so much power to the people that surround you is one of the best way to go. And just knowing why you're doing what you're doing at the end of the day, I think that is really important.
Well said. Well, you are your pilot, or you're on your way to becoming a pilot. You have your commercial license already, so I guess you're a pilot. Um,
Yeah.
That's quite an achievement. That's quite an achievement for anybody, anywhere, but especially for somebody where you come from, especially somebody where there's not that many female pilots. It's a really good accomplishment for you. But that's not all that you've done, of course. We started this conversation talking about your foundation. So let's come back to your foundation now. What sparked the idea to begin Bambino Life Foundation?
I started Bambino. I think I was straight out of high school. I had always wanted to start it way before, but when you're young, you may not get as much support from people. They may not trust you that much. So after high school, I really wanted to go deeper into helping. Like I said, I grew up in a background where I saw my mother helping, and that grew up on me. And I also knew what it meant to lack and not have something. And I felt like if I could do something, or if someone had done something for me, then I would have appreciated it. So I thought if I do something for someone in that particular position, I'll be helping them or paying it forward in sorts. So I think after high school, I realized that I couldn't wait forever to get money to be able to start the organization. What I decided to do is I decided to start with whatever I had, which meant I would go to people who had things like they wouldn't use anymore, like clothes that were worn out or the one no longer using, old books, old shoes. And then I would collect these things and then I would take them to orphanages or children on the streets. And that is how it basically came to happen, that I would get things from those who did not use them anymore, who didn't want them anymore, and then I'll take them to those who need them. You know what they say, one man is trash is another man is gold. So something along those lines. And of course, with time I was joined with a team of young people who also wanted to give back to their communities and their societies and wanted to see change. So we would go to orphanages, we'd go to street children, and then we also incorporated creating awareness about children living with disabilities, because we realized there was a lot of um, myths going on around that area, where parents thought their children were bewitched, where parents thought their children were cursed because they were autistic or they were suffering from any sort of disability. So we wanted to create awareness around that particular area. And the last thing that came was promoting our child education and empowerment. That came on after I started pursuing my course as a pilot. It made so much sense to be able to use that platform and reach out, because this was something that looked like it was not achievable, lady pilot, especially in Uganda. So I wanted to use my platform and then reach out to these girls in rural areas, girls who have never seen pilots, and talk to them and tell them, I know what you're going through. I started in such a background, but it did not stop me from dreaming, and here I am. You can also do the same. Rather than drop out of school to get married because you feel like your options are limited, you can stay in school. But not just talking about it, we wanted to go further with it. We wanted to make sure that the girls had an opportunity. For example, if you go in these areas, one of the reasons why girls drop out of school is menstruation poverty. So they cannot afford sanitary pads, or they cannot afford things like, yes, sanitary pads actually. So some of them drop out of school because of this. And it sounds very ridiculous and weird, but it is very, very true. Or others, the moment they get that, they don't know that they can get pregnant. So there was a lot of things. And what we wanted to do as an organization is make an impact that was not just going into an area and giving them sanitary pads or disposable sanitary pads. We're looking at long-term, sustainability. So we were going into these communities. We are actually still going into these communities. We have something the end of this month. We teach them how to make the reusable sanitary pads. So we get different girls, we teach them, because when you teach one girl, she's able to teach her entire homestead. We have a saying here in Africa that you teach a woman, you teach the entire community. Because when you teach one girl, she can be able to teach her sister, her mother, everyone. So when you teach them, we were teaching them how to make reusable sanitary pads, teaching them a few hands-on skills so that they empower themselves both financially and then also domestically. So yes, so that is the project of the Girl Child Education and Empowerment. That way, if they're able to stay in school, then now you can talk about things like dreams. Because why would you talk about someone dreaming bigger if they're not even in school? It does not make sense. They have to first be in school for them to be able to achieve their dreams.
I'm curious if after teaching these girls these skills, is it having an effect? Excuse me. Is it having an effect on the dropout rate? Are people staying in school as a result of the skills that they've learned?
As far as we know, yes. It may not be currently. I would say the skills we teach are not on a very great level, because we teach a few things like maybe making soap, maybe making reusable sanitary pads. And one of the things that we have also added, we partnered with an organization from the Netherlands, and they give out mosquito nets, because also malaria is a big problem here, and children die from it. So we try to tackle all of those things, but from the feedback that we have gotten so far, it has always been positive. Because even before we leave, most of the times when you start out, when you talk to a girl, most of them want to, if you ask them what they hope to achieve, someone will tell you, I want to get married. Like, that is the absolute achievement. And by the time we are done with this outreach, if you ask them again, this has happened so many times, someone tells you, I think marriage can wait. I want to pursue something because I see what you have done or what has happened for you. And now I have hope that it can also happen for me too. So in the long run, yes, in the long run, it starts with the mentality, because you can't force someone to be in school. Even if you force them, at the end of the day, it has to be them to decide whether it is worth it or not. So changing that mentality, yes, we have gotten a bit of positive feedback.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So, a lot of people have ideas like you did to begin your foundation. What kind of advice would you give to another young person or a person of any age, I guess, who had an idea for something that they wanted to do and they just weren't sure how to begin it, how to take the first few steps? What kind of advice would you give to a person in that position?
The kind of advice I would give, and based off experience, I did not sit and wait. I did not just maybe hope things would work out for me, because there is this thing, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I've noticed most of the youth, they expect things to be done for them, things to just happen out of the blue. So even me on a daily basis, I do get applications from young people or the youth. I am still a youth myself, but I do get these applications, and some of them are even older than me. And someone is telling me, "Can you support me? Can you send me money? I want to make a foundation." And for me, if I had done it another way, maybe I would be like, "Oh, okay, this." But because of my experience, I'm very certain that I did not have actual money when I started my foundation. It was more of thinking and having a different perspective. So instead of waiting for money to come for me, or instead of waiting for people to invest money in me, I knew that it had to start with me. And I knew that I had to start with the resources that I had at the time. So I had to make it work no matter what. And that is why I started with getting clothes from, people. But now where we are, we have the ability to be able to get actual material and actual resources to be able to help these girls to do everything. So my advice to the youth would be, and as cliche as it sounds, believing in yourself, but more than that, not waiting for things to happen or for someone to do something for you, but you starting with whatever you have or whatever resource you have. And I can almost see people thinking, that is ridiculous. How can you say you can start with whatever source you really have? But at the end of the day, you have to look at it this way. If you're in a position where no one is going to reach out to you and give you probably the money that you have or you want, are you going to sit in that position forever and not do anything? The chances are no. I feel like you have to research what you want to do. I do not want to talk about mainly about NGOs, because NGOs, it could be a bit easy. NGOs, if you have a social thing that you want to change in the environment or society, start with yourself. That is as simple as that. Be the change that you want to see. If you want to help the youth in your community, start with the youth, call the youth, talk to them. Start small. You do not have to start big. Now, when it comes to businesses, that could be a whole different thing, because people may need money to do that. But at the end of the day, I think an all-time believing in yourself is the way to go. Yeah, believing in yourself.
Well, it's a cliche for a reason because it's fantastic advice, I think.
Yeah, yes, yes.
Talking about your foundation, starting your foundation, I think that people would be interested to hear about some of the challenges that you faced in starting your foundation. What were some of the biggest things that you had to overcome to get your foundation to where it is today?
Oh my God. Having a foundation is not as easy as it seems. And I've seen people who have started and dropped out before even anything happens. It takes such an incredible amount of sacrifice, a lot of sacrifice, because for the first years or for the first 2 years, everything that I was putting into foundation was my own personal money. I did not have any form of funding. Even up to now, we actually don't have we do not have funding. Let me say, like, it's an organization that gives us money. We do not have that. It is mainly us who like tap into our pockets. Like I said, it's a group of people who feel like they want to make a difference. Even we have some of the people who support us are individuals, taking from themselves and wanting to see change. They see what is happening, they like what is happening, and they want to contribute towards it. Friends from different parts of the world, they see what is happening and they want to contribute. So it's more like how they say goodwill. Yes, it's more like goodwill, and that is how the organization has been running. But it has been a bit challenging, especially when you do not have resources, when you do not have funds. But at the end of the day, you try to understand that it's not about you, and you're helping someone who is way less fortunate and really, really needs that. So you wake up and you try your level best. You try to reach out, you try to get as much as you can, and you try to make it happen. But it has been a lot of sacrifice and a lot of passion and the willingness to know that what I'm doing is perhaps impacting someone out there has made me go on. But more than that, finding yourself a great team is also something. People who believe in the same things that you do, who have the same passion as you do, it can go a long way. Yeah, so one of the greatest challenges was funding. That is one of the greatest challenges. It was funding, looking for funding, finding funding for the projects that you want to work on.
Of course. Well, since we're on the topic, if somebody is watching this and they become familiar with what you do through this conversation and they want to contribute, how can somebody contribute? Where can you send them? Where can you direct them?
Okay, so we do have a website, which is www.bambinolife.org. And before even anyone would want to contribute, I would first recommend them to go to the website so that they really see what we are doing. We try to drive social impact. They see what we're doing and they see if they are to contribute, what their contribution will be bringing forward. But more than that, even partnerships are very, very welcome, because most of the partnerships we have had have been amazing and have been very life-changing for the people that we have impacted. So going to the website, but if you feel like the website is not working out for you, reaching out to me through my LinkedIn or my any social media platforms, all of them are under Ashaba Faridah.
Of course, I'll put links to all of that below, and I'll mention that at the end of our talk as well. You mentioned partnerships. What kind of partnerships would be beneficial to the foundation?
Well, mostly partnerships with organizations that are also trying to, or that are under the same mission, or that are trying to drive a bit of change. Like one of the partnerships we have is an organization that makes mosquito nets. So they have a campaign, buy one and give one free. So whenever one person buys one net, an extra net comes to us, or comes to, you know, the communities that we go to. Something as simple as that. They do get people to buy the nets, but an extra net for whatever net is purchased comes to us. And that, you can see how that is really really smart, but also really, really important, because then you get people or children who get to be saved from malaria. And yeah, so it depends. Partnerships honestly depends, as long as it aligns with, you know, driving social change and bringing about social impact. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. What about the future of the foundation? You know, how long ago did you start the foundation? Something like 5 years, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What are your future plans for the foundation? How would you like it to grow or evolve? I'm sure you have a lot of ideas.
Long term, I will look at something stable, like with stable funding coming in, with stable and assured funding coming in. But more than that, we are looking at foundation having a facility whereby the girls are able to come, train, go, train others, like a facility where, you know, they're able to come and learn different skills, and even more than that, be able to sell their skills. Be able to sell the products of the things that they make, so they can earn a living from whatever they make. And yeah, long term, I would see us helping more people than we are helping now, and really impacting more people than we are impacting now.
Well, you're
And
helping a
maybe
lot of people
owning a
already as it
plane.
is. So, yeah, sorry.
And maybe owning a plane, you know, the foundation having its own plane, so
It
so
makes
that we are
perfect
able
sense.
to
Yeah.
so that we're able to go easier into areas that have been untapped, or areas where people never reach. Yeah.
Kind of bridging your two passions, right?
Yeah, exactly. That
That's
is
fantastic.
my long term, both as a pilot, that is my long term goal, to be able to lease planes for the foundation and fly as a volunteer, or fly for charity, actually. That is my long term as a pilot.
Well,
And
that was
also as
my
a foundation, that's the long term.
That was my next question for you, is your kind of career path. I don't know if you consider the foundation as part of your career, but I think you should. Obviously, your pilot, your work as a pilot is a great career. But where do you think that where would you like to see yourself, let's say in about 10 years' time, both professionally and
Okay, so
education?
in about maybe 5 years' time,
Mm.
before we reach the 10 years mark, in about 5 years' time, I would like to work for a private organization when it comes to flying. So I'm looking at maybe private jets like Gulfstreams and all that kind of stuff. I would like to fly private, but for a limited time, not for a long-term kind of thing. And then 10 years down the road, I would want, or I would hope that the organization is at a level or maybe a bit to the level where you see like the World Food Program, where they're able to lease planes and fly them into different areas
Mm.
and be able to provide relief or to be able to help. That is what I would want to do. I would want to fly for charity, flying for the purpose of being able to help and, reaching out to those communities where people never reach, or the grassroots communities. That is what I would want to do long term. You're looking at end of 10 years and above. Yeah, so I would want to fly for charity. I would want to fly for charity. And yeah,
That's a wonderful goal. I'm sure you'll achieve it. Um,
thank
you
you.
are an inspiration to so many people, I'm sure, but I want to know who inspires you today. Can you think of somebody either from your life who is a great inspiration to you? I mean, we've already discussed your mother. Is there somebody else in your life, or maybe, a public figure or a writer or somebody who gives you great inspiration?
Okay, I do like this girl. I think she's called Malala,
Yes.
that girl from Pakistan. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think what she's doing is really amazing. And yeah,
Malala.
so I could mention two people. Yeah.
Sure. Well, you mentioned Oprah and Malala. Those are two great inspirations to people across the globe. So it's no surprise to hear that they're inspirations to you as well. Okay. Outside of your work as a pilot and your foundation, you also seem interested in inspiring and motivating others. You have a YouTube channel where you share some of your thoughts. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about meditative envisioning, if you'd
Oh
like.
my God. Oh my God. I can. Oh my God. So I actually can't believe that you checked out my YouTube, because it's really on the low. But one of the other things that really fascinates me and always, and I've been really intrigued by, has been spirituality.
Yeah.
And I've always been fascinated by our purpose here. Like you feel like you have a deep calling within you. Are you feeling that purpose? Are we one with the world? Are we doing the right thing and all of that?
Mhm.
And this has been one of actually my greatest inspiration moving forward, knowing that things happen the way they happen, and trying to understand the logic behind everything. Sorry, logic is not the right word to apply, but knowing that you're not here just for yourself, but having a purpose and feeling like you have a purpose to leave your impact on this world, to do something better than you left the world. And yeah, so that is one of the reasons why I have such a channel, to be able to appeal to people who also connect spirituality with their day-to-day life and try to find purpose in this life, not just saying that I'm good at a business, I'm good at this. A spiritual level connection where you feel like what you're doing is actually really, really your calling, and that is your purpose here on earth. It gives you a sense of fulfillment, and it gives you a sense of accomplishment, knowing that you're fulfilling what you are born to do. And so meditative envisioning is basically a state where you envision the life that you want, or you envision the life or the future that you hope to achieve. So mainly meditating and focusing. If, say, you want a house, and rather than tackling it on this area of let me get money, which is also good, getting money and what, but doing the meditative envisioning, it means that you're seeing yourself in that house before even the house manifests itself. So you're in a state whereby you see yourself owning the house, being in that house, and putting your mental or your subconscious mind on that level of thinking. You're able to attract things that align for you to be able to achieve that house. So that is what meditative envisioning is: envisioning the future that you want, seeing yourself in a future that you hope to achieve or that you hope to get.
Yeah, I think that it's a common practice. It goes by many different names, I think, but it's a wonderful way to bring yourself towards your goals, I think. Yeah, I watched your video on YouTube. I quite liked it. Keep it up.
Thank you.
As we speak, it is August 2020, and the COVID-19 pandemic is still quite active worldwide. How has the COVID-19 pandemic affected Uganda, and how has it affected you personally?
Mm, First of all, I think Uganda kind of took a bit of precautions before it went even out of hand, because way before even we had any case, the country was already in lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
And it was recently, I think, that we had our first death. I think they're now about 6. The recovery rate has been more than the cases that are on ground currently. I don't know right now whether they've increased, but that's how it was. And the government tried so hard to curb the situation before it went out of hand. But Uganda being a third world country, that has been a bit hard, because you cannot convince people to stay indoors if you're not giving them what to eat, or if you're not giving them what to so people feared that they would die from starvation before they died from COVID. So in that particular mentality sense, people would go out even when they were told not to go out, because they didn't have what to eat and they wanted to get money. If you the kind of economy where we are, it's more of what you make that day is what you use to buy the food, you know. So day-to-day work is very important to the average of Ugandans. So telling the person to stay indoors is robbing them of their livelihood. So most of the people, no matter what, even though they were trying to do it for their safety, it didn't matter, because at the end of the day, what is the purpose if I'm going to die from starvation before COVID gets me? So people were like, I would rather get COVID, but when I have something to eat. So right now the situation, it's partial lockdown. They have lifted most of the limitations of people are able to work. Not all of them. Well, me being on the airport kind of thing, the airport is still closed. Most of the borders are still closed. Have I been affected? Before, I would always travel for international speaking engagements.
Mm-hmm.
And because of this, I cannot be able to go out, because most of the countries have closed their borders. Some of them are lifting that up, but Uganda is still pretty much closed. The airport is closed. So there isn't so much international travel. So that has affected me. Even my training as the multi-engine kind of training that I was doing, I've not been able to do that because we're training at the airport and the airport is currently still closed. So I can't be able to do that. So I've not been doing much at all. I've been in a sitting down mode and mainly doing online interviews, online speaking engagements, but not so much as going out or doing anything on the physical things of it.
Has it been challenging for you?
Yes, it has been challenging. It has been challenging. But for me, having life and being alive, I feel like that is what is most important, because it wouldn't make sense if I'm sick and I have all this money that I want, or I'm doing all these engagements that I want, and I'm fighting for my life. So right now, top of my priority is being healthy and being happy.
Good, good. That's a good goal. You seem to do so many things. To add to the list is your role as managing director of STEM Queens UG. Could you tell us a bit about what exactly that is?
So that is an initiative. It's actually under Bambino. It's a partnership between Bambino and an organization. It's called MT Energy in Australia. So what this initiative is about is encouraging young girls to participate in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And through going to different schools and also presenting young girls with role models who are already in those particular positions, like engineers, doctors, and all of that, and bringing these role models forward so that they encourage the girls to be able to participate again in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. That is a volunteer position actually, and it's still one of the things under promoting girl child education and empowerment. So it falls a bit under that.
I see. And that's, let's see, STEM. What does that stand for again?
Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
Okay, it wasn't a test. You're correct. One more question for you, Ashaba. Could you discuss your volunteer work with the United Nations?
It's, I wouldn't say, okay, this is what happened. So last year, I was selected by the United Nations Women, UN Women International, and it was a campaign, and the campaign was called Impossible to Ignore campaign, and they selected 9 women. So the women who were selected were selected under the category of women innovators. And one of the women who actually featured is Dr. Crystal Johnson. She's the first African American female director at NASA. And the other lady was Betty Wolf. She's an innovative musician. She's based in UK. She's really big there, and she's been doing such amazing work. I won't go deep. I mean, one of her projects that really inspired me was music and dementia. So she had this project where she's singing and try to see how music can heal people who have, dementia. And whenever they play these tones, the people remember a bit of memories back in life. That is really incredible. So I'll not go into it, but yeah. So they selected 9 women, and I was among those women. So we were called Women Innovators, and the campaign was such a huge thing. I think it was on Women's Day, and most of the platforms, the advertising platforms, like I don't want to say them wrongly, but I may not know the pronunciation. I think it's NASDAQ. NASDAQ. I don't know. I think.
Yes, NASDAQ.
What is it called?
NASDAQ.
Yeah. Yes. And then I think GC DAX. I don't know. I think something. I think you know it. So and then also Times Square, and there were so many platforms, advertising platforms that were offered, and this campaign created over, I think, 2 million impressions across the world, across New York City and London, and I think some other places. So our faces were appearing in these areas. What they were trying to do, they wanted, if you turn, you see the lady's face. If you just look here, you see the person's face. So I was in that campaign. I think I was only African and maybe the youngest.
Yeah.
And it was such, I just remember someone sending me a picture. My picture was at the Westfield World Trade Center, and someone sent me one of the London Underground, and it was such an incredible campaign. What the campaign said, it said, "This is Ashaba Faridah. She is now impossible to ignore."
I would agree with that. And that's quite an
that was
honor.
an amazing.
Sorry for interrupting you. It's quite an honor, and I think you're completely deserving of that honor. Ashaba, you have already done so many great things at such a young age. I'm excited to follow you over the years to come to see what other great things you'll achieve. I'd like to thank you very much for joining me today on Meet My Inspiration.
Thank you so much, Chris, for having me here today with you on Meet My Inspiration.
Thank you so much to Ashaba for all that she does and for taking the time to share her story with us. If you want to find out more about Ashaba and keep up on her activities, you can find her on most major social media platforms at the links below. She also has a great TED Talk available on YouTube. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Meet My Inspiration, and I hope we've been able to inspire you too, even if just a little. Sometimes that's all it takes to make great things happen. Using the internet without ExpressVPN is like broadcasting to the world everything you do online. Here's how to protect yourself and get 3 months for free. Did you know that your internet service provider knows every single website you visit? And what's worse is they can sell this information to ad companies and tech giants who will use your data to target you. ExpressVPN creates a secure encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet so that your online activity can't be seen by anyone. ExpressVPN works on all devices, phones, laptops, even routers, so that everyone who shares your Wi-Fi is protected too. And the best part is using ExpressVPN is super easy. Just fire up the app, click one button, and you're protected. ExpressVPN is the world's #1 rated VPN by TechRadar, Wired, The Verge, and countless others. So if you believe your online activity is your business, secure yourself by visiting expressvpn.com/MMI, and you can get an extra 3 months for free. That's expressvpn.com/MMI.